Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see everyone on this beautiful Labor Day weekend and Shabbat. It's always great to celebrate together. Mazal Tov to the entire Chessman family. I'll start with a little scenario. Let's say I'm downstairs in the Bynes Library, down on the first floor, and I take this Chumash out of the reserve section. And I'm really engrossed in it, and I'm looking for ideas for the Parsha, and I can't put it down. No, literally, I just can't. And I'm just locked in it. And suddenly I get a phone call saying that I have to run to make a pastoral visit. And I'm rushing so much that I take the Chumash with me, even though it's a book out of the reserve section of the library. Not good. And the next day, I look in my briefcase and I see that the Chumash is still there. And now I need to pay a library fine. Of course, our library doesn't actually have any fines, but you get the picture. This happened on a much more serious level about 6 months ago when a former civilian employee of the Defense Department got sentenced to 3 months in prison. She didn't take a Chumash, which apparently is okay, but she did take classified information to her hotel room. And we can see that this is clearly something that our government takes seriously. Now, given the allegations of inappropriate handling of top secret documents by the former president, this case raises an important question that strikes right at the heart of our democracy. Are there different standards for different people? Is justice applied evenly? Now, our Torah has a lot to say about this. As a matter of fact, one of the hallmarks of the Torah was to change the system of justice that in its time was dominated by favoring the rich, the powerful, and instead to try to help make it more even for the poor and the powerless. In the book of Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, it states, Lo tasu avel b'mishpat, lo tisa pnei dal, velo tedar pnei gadol b'tzedek tishpot amitecha. You shall not render an unfair decision. Don't favor the poor or show deference to the rich. Judge everyone the same. Now, of course, the Torah knows that it's not so easy to put this into practice. There are all kinds of cases and gray areas that make this more challenging. And in this morning's parasha, it addresses that. It says that the religious leaders, the judges, should sort of function as a high court so that they can do their best to interpret the Torah, interpret the law when rendering a decision. And then it says, Lo tasur min hadavar asher yagidu lecha yaminu smol. Don't, turn away from the decision that's made and the instructions that are given to you. Don't deviate from the verdict, either to the right or to the left. Implement the law across the board as it was interpreted, not as you may think it should be. Again, the law should apply evenly for everyone. And then the Torah goes on from there to another case of the powerful and the risks of power. The Torah was especially wary of people who had extreme power. And this reading goes into that at great length. A person with some greater power even than the judges, the leaders, the scholars, like a king. Today, maybe you could imagine someone like Vladimir Putin or another authoritarian leader, someone who really doesn't have, at first glance, any system or any check or balance in their authority. And the Torah addresses that person head on. They should not be above the law. The Torah says if you need a king, which means the Torah would prefer you not to have a king, but if you need one, when the king is seated on their royal throne above everyone else, then the king shall write a copy of this teaching from the copy that is in the charge of the Levitical priests. Apparently, there was a copy of the scroll kept in a secure location, just saying. And the king would go and take it out just for the purpose of sitting there and copying it. Then the Torah says, quote, let it remain with him and let the king read it all the days of his life, so he may learn to revere Adonai his God, to observe faithfully every word of this teaching and all of the laws. Thus he will not act haughtily towards his fellows, nor deviate from the instruction again, nor to the right or nor to the left. How prescient. The Torah warned us, once someone has power, one may take advantage and abuse it. Even the king is bound by the Torah. And the details here are great. Not only does the king have to have a copy of the Torah by his side at all times, he actually has to study it every day, like take an hour and read it. But the Torah goes further. The king has to actually write his own Torah scroll, which, if you think it's challenging to read the Torah, which it is, it's even more challenging to write it. Rava, a rabbi who lived around the year 300 in Babylonia, takes this even further. He says, "Afal pi shehinicho lo avutav la'adam hasefer Torah mitzvah lichtov mishalo." Even if you inherited a Torah scroll from your father, from previous generations, the mitzvah is you have to go and write it yourself. This is not some like copy and paste job that you can do in Google Docs. Just like actually taking notes with a pen, which of course the students around here might be looking at me a little strangely, or typing notes on your computer. There's something about that effort, about writing, about typing it that makes you really internalize the ideas. And then there's this great ingenious move that the Talmud makes. It compares kings to teachers, to the sages. And then the Hasidic tradition says, well, we're all like teachers and sages. We're all students. We're all supposed to study Torah. So this includes all of us. In fact, the rabbis go so far as to suggest that every Jew must make a copy of the Torah for him or her or themselves. All leaders must be engaged in learning and studying Torah, the values that help us live morally. And this is the essence of justice. And thus we see this fascinating model. The king is serving as a duma, an exemplar, a model for study and for learning. And then we are modeling the behavior, which then goes back to the king. And in our tradition, learning isn't merely an academic exercise. Learning is to be implemented as practice, right? The Talmud says study is the greatest mitzvah because it leads to action. We are supposed to be advocates for justice and act accordingly. And so we see that there's no special application of the law for the king. And this requirement of daily study is a reminder that the king not forget his place. We see that in the core teaching right at the beginning of the parasha. It says, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, one of the famous teachings, right? Justice, justice, you shall pursue. The repetition of the word, as Rabbi Kling-Perkins said, it serves to remind us of how important it is. All of this learning reminds us to act, to bring a more even-handed justice into the world. And we should do that by learning frequently, if not every day. Of course, our adult education committee is working hard to provide opportunities, and we have many rich opportunities for you to avail yourself of right here at Emunah. All of this gives us, I think, a direction in life. When we see injustice, we should speak out. We should ensure that justice is practiced equally for everyone, from the king to the most powerless person. And further, we learn that the king is subject to the laws that not only guard against the abuse of power, but also to remind us that we should understand the same rules. The rules for the king remind us to work for ourselves. We are enjoined to study Torah so that we can then be the most just in our own lives and a more just society. So now that I'm thinking about it, it might be okay to grab the Chumash and take it home. But if you don't mind, check it out at the library on your way out. Shabbat Shalom.